Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us to this very timely session on Lebanon-Israel ceasefire agreement and the developments in south of Lebanon. Lebanon is going through major transformations. After the defeat of Hezbollah in its war against Israel and the killing of its leadership, including its chief Hassan Nasrallah, the group agreed to a ceasefire agreement in November of last year. The deadline of the agreement was extended to be revised later this month on February the 18th. The Lebanese Armed Forces has been coordinating with the US, which is heading the mechanism overseeing the implementation of the agreement, and the UNIFIL to deploy south of Lebanon and disarm Hezbollah across the country per the ceasefire agreement. There have been mixed reviews on the pace and performance of the LAF vis-a-vis disarming Hezbollah. But on the ground, the LAF seems to be deploying and taking over some military infrastructure belonging to Hezbollah. It is also worth mentioning that the army requires a clear political decision, guidance, and a political cover from the Lebanese government in order to fulfill its job. Meanwhile, Lebanon elected a new president, Efraim, former LAF commander, and now have a new government headed by Prime Minister Nawaf Salam. This government is set to make major appointments related to the ceasefire agreement, mainly appointing the new commander of the Lebanese Armed Forces, who is going to oversee the implementation of this agreement. Both leaders promised the implementation of the ceasefire agreement and other international resolutions. The question is when and how. Where is the LAF today? What has it achieved so far? Is it going to meet its objectives by February 18? What does the LAF need in order to do its job properly, mainly from the US? Will the new government play a better role regarding the ceasefire? Will we see a ministerial statement and a political decision clearly highlighting the disarmament of Hezbollah? What needs to be done for this political decision to be achieved? How do you see Hezbollah reacting to all this disarmament and political change? What is the group's main priority today? What does it mean that Hezbollah and its Shia ally Amal has at least 4 ministers in the new cabinet? Will this hinder reforms or the implementation of international resolutions? There's also the issue of the other border, the Syrian-Lebanese border, with recent news about tension and clashes between the new Syrian army and the pro-Hezbollah clans in the Bekaa. What is the LAF doing? Is this going to impact Hezbollah activities within Lebanon and its disarmament activities? What about Israel? So how is Israel seeing this plan? Is Israel going to withdraw anytime soon or at least by February 18? Is there going to be any extension of the agreement? All these questions are very timely and they will have to be answered before next week, before the February 18 deadline. And there's also the question of having an extension. Are we going to see another extension of the agreement? Today, we have 2 separate panels for specific reasons. The first panel have 2 speakers, and the second panel have also 2 speakers. Both are going to try to answer these questions. We have on the first panel, we have 2 speakers from Lebanon. Professor Makram Rabah, who is a history professor at the American University of Beirut, and retired Brigadier General Fadi Daoud, who was also the commander of the Fajr al-Jurud operation against ISIS in Lebanon in 2017. When this panel is over, we'll move to the second panel, which will feature 2 Israeli speakers, my colleague Assaf Orion, who's also a retired Brigadier General, and a current Brigadier General at the IDF, Effie, Defrin, who was also the previous head of the international cooperation between Lebanon and Israel, to talk about the Israeli perspective. So welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Makram, the floor is yours. Sorry, just before you start, I was asked to tell the audience that if you'd like to ask questions of our panelists during the event, please enter this into the Zoom link, the Zoom Q&A function, at the bottom of your screen. And if you are watching this policy forum on our website or YouTube, feel free to email your questions to policyforum, one word, policyforum@washingtoninstitute.org. Thank you. Go ahead, Makram.
Thank you, Hanin. It's always a pleasure to be back home at the Washington Institute. And it's always a pleasure also to share the platform with you and with General Fadi Daoud. Well, I don't think anyone, or at least people in our field, were projecting that ultimately the destruction of Hezbollah will come, as well as the collapse of Assad. However, we never actually figured, or at least I didn't figure that this will happen without the bloodshed that would include a kind of a civil war. And I think the Lebanese also need to think about that many of the things which transpired over the last year are things which they should have done themselves. I know it is actually impossible for the Lebanese to admit that Israel has done the job for them, because Israel, or the Israeli army, or whatever you want to call it, the deep state, actually cares about its own people. Whereas in Lebanon, we don't have a state to begin with to care about its citizens. Hezbollah, and I do believe that the late Nasrallah, and here using the word late is actually very gratifying, because it reminds us that people died, transforming these people into gods. And ultimately, I think many people in the West, and particularly in Washington, D.C., people actually believe that Nasrallah is unkillable or he is immortal. And the recent events proved otherwise. So what we could not understand is a world without Hezbollah and a world without Bashar al-Assad. This is why, while I do subscribe to the purpose of this panel, which is trying to understand what is needed on the ground by the LAF as well as Israel to get rid of Hezbollah, at the same time, I think we have to go back to the idea that one of the reasons, or one of the narratives which Hezbollah has used over the last decades, is that the state does not exist. And here, trying to bring in partners to the state is also counterproductive. Recently, with the election of Joseph Aoun, we had a slogan that was spread by his fan club, mostly the Mukhabarat al-Jaysh, the military intelligence, which all of a sudden started printing banners. So we had something called Jaysh Sha'ab Dawla, which is army, people, and the state. I think this is very wrong. There's no such thing as Jaysh Sha'ab. There's Dawla, and everything is underneath it. And here, the most important thing that everyone who is in power right now, be it General Aoun, the good General Aoun, not Michel Aoun, or Nawaf Salam, or anyone who is related in any way to the state, have not updated their system to the post-October 7 world, in the sense that they still believe that they can get away with putting the army to face this problem without taking a clear decision. I think this is very important. Here, up until now, as we speak, the current administration of Joseph Aoun and Nawaf Salam believe that the problem of Hezbollah will simply go away. And this is, I think, is one of the cardinal sins of anyone who claims that wants to protect Lebanon. Because at the end of the day, over the years, we have breached the Constitution time and again. The Constitution is clear. There's no diversity of weapons, and the monopoly of power and monopoly of violence in Lebanon should be to the state, not to the army. The army, at the end of the day, and the commander of the army answers to the executive branch of government. In no way do we want the upcoming Lebanese army commander or anyone who is in charge of disarming of Hezbollah to be portrayed as someone who has autonomy when it comes to politics. The political will has to come from the government. And more importantly, we have to remind that the people who actually signed off on the disarming of Hezbollah, and not only disarming of Hezbollah in South al-Litani, but the giving away of arms based on the pleas and the begging of Hezbollah and Nabih Berri, where Nabih Berri and Hezbollah, the people who signed off on the 1701 plus, which they don't want to recognize, is Nabih Berri. Nabih Berri brokered a ceasefire between the so-called Shiites of Lebanon, which he doesn't represent, and the Israeli state. And the side deal, which Amos Hochstein signed with Israel, is applicable to the Lebanese people, which means that we have a sacred duty to implement this, not because we care about the security and the future of Israel, but rather we care about the future of the Lebanese, including the millions and so people that were displaced from their homes. There's no way in hell that a single southern citizen will go back home except after the total disarmament of Hezbollah. This is what I'm saying, and if my friend Luqman Slim behind me was still alive and he haven't been killed by Hezbollah, he would have done the same. I think Washington knows this as well. It's not about the Trump administration. These people believe that if they wait out the Trump administration, they can go back to business as normal. The entirety of the policy world, including those who are now part and parcel of the Trump administration, as well as people who claim to be Democrats, have realized that, and I do believe that when Hassan Nasrallah said we don't want to go to war, this was the only time he was saying the truth. But it wasn't his option, because Hezbollah are more dangerous than any of the Iranian militias, or were dangerous more than Iranian militias, because they were in the business of capacity building for the axis of evil. And with going after the head of the snake, Hezbollah, now what's required of us is to ask for the Lebanese state to take care of the southern border as well as the eastern border. What's happening now on the border with Syria, allowing these gangs and drug dealers to portray themselves as if they were protecting their kids and their families, is a total farce. This is why I, as a citizen, do not look at the Lebanese army for any sort of action. Their commands and their directives should come from the cabinet clearly, without any sort of gray area, and without the talk of the rights of the people to protect themselves and defend themselves. The Lebanese government is, I pay my salary, so professional soldiers like Fadi Daoud here and his men protect me. If I am to protect myself, I'll protect myself against the tyranny of the government, not Israel or Jordan or Syria. That's very clear. And this is why I think our discussion here should focus that the only way to disarm Hezbollah is basically to put the Lebanese state under the spotlight and to go after them one by one if they decide to slack off. And thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Makram. I have a couple of questions for you, but I'll come back to you later. This was great. Fadi, now the floor is yours. Please go ahead. General? You're mute. Can you unmute?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you got it.
Hello. Thank you for
General.
asking me. Thank you for asking me. Hello, Dr. Rabah. Thank you for being part of the same panel. Actually, I'm gonna present a short briefing about the situation in south of Lebanon now. Where do we stand? What is the left doing there? And then I will talk about the left Lebanese Armed Forces need, and what can especially the United States do to help the left execute its mission. A short briefing of the situation. The ceasefire agreement mandates the left to deploy 10,000 soldiers on southern Lebanon. An initial deployment of 1,500 troops, which was the first and second intervention regiment, was sent to the border area to reinforce the approximately 4,000 soldiers already stationed there. Also, the ceasefire agreement required a US-led oversight committee working alongside the left to monitor the compliance with the ceasefire. Okay, now, what are the challenges? There are two main challenges. First of all is the Israeli withdrawal delays. In case Israelis are going to delay their withdrawal, this will create a cause maybe, or let's say Hezbollah will use this cause to ignite refusal to disarm, challenging Lebanon's new president and new government. Meaning, if they delay their withdrawal from the south of Lebanon, it will create an issue. At the same time, the left, Lebanese Armed Forces, has to make sure to pull back Hezbollah north of Litani. And at the same time, the left must deny Hezbollah the way to attack Israelis on the border. Where do we stand now? The left has made significant steps in implementing the ceasefire agreement by deploying troops, securing borders, and working with international partners, meaning the UNIFIL and the Americans, the French too. Secondly, LAF has already confiscated 550 Hezbollah positions and houses. Thirdly, the LAF has already assaulted 100 weapons cache related to Hezbollah in south of Lebanon. The UNIFIL has provided the information regarding the cache to the LAF to assault, and the US-led committee with General Jeffers has provided the other information regarding the Hezbollah position. However, the situation in Gaza, the Israeli internal politics, such as calls for new settlements, and it's now in the media, it is in the news, calling to not withdraw from 5 key position terrains like Al-Labuna, Al-Hamamis. There are 5 key positions there. And there are calls to install settlements in those key position terrains. The rising tensions on Lebanon's eastern borders, all this will not facilitate, will complicate the situation of the ceasefire in south of Lebanon. What does the LAF need to do its job properly, and mainly from the US? I'm going to skip all levels. I'm going to skip the micro and the meso level, and I will agree with Dr. Makram about the last level, which is the macro level. Firstly, the LAF, Lebanese Armed Forces, are regarded with big esteem and enthusiasm, but it still operates under the Ministry of Defense, which in turn is accountable to the Lebanese cabinet. Any engagement with the LAF must consider this broader political framework. Secondly, there have been past experience where politicians issued vague or ambiguous directives to maintain flexibility and avoid accountability. For the military, unclear orders may be seen as non-binding. Military leadership may suspect deliberate ambiguity leading to hesitation in execution. To prevent such situation, it is crucial that sensitive orders be formulated with absolute precision, clarity, and directness. Thirdly, the LAF currently operate under an acting commander with limited authority and decision-making power. A permanent, fully appointed commander is needed to ensure stability. Additionally, the LAF require leadership renewal, bringing in fresh perspective and modern strategies to enhance operational effectiveness. Strengthening the command structure is crucial for maintaining credibility and readiness in these critical times. Hello.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
you're done?
Okay. Yes, and I am. Yeah.
Okay, I'll come back to you with a couple of questions. Thank you very, very much. That was very valuable. Makram, before we move to the other questions, and let me remind the audience that if you would like to ask the panelists any questions during the event, please enter them into the Zoom Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And if you are watching this policy forum on our website or YouTube, feel free to email your questions to policyforum, one word, policyforum@washingtoninstitute.org. Makram, I'm going to come back to you with a couple of questions. You made a few interesting points, including one that really I think is very important, especially for, I think, Lebanese understand what you mean when you say that the new government hasn't updated the system to post-October 7. Its own system, its own thinking, its own perspective of Lebanon. They're coming to a system that as if October 7 has happened, and I agree with you on that. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that in terms of the concrete steps that they need to do in order to update this vision, or to come up? Is it some kind of a defense strategy? Is it the ministerial statement? What do we need to see in order to realize that something has really changed in the new government, or is it just like a little bit different from the one that from its predecessor in terms of reforms, but not really different when it comes to the relationship with Israel, October 7, it's the resistance rhetoric, etc. So what do we really need to see here? The other question, which is I think important to before the extension, before we see another extension, is for the Lebanese army and for the Lebanese government, political circles. How do you see, what is the best way to actually do the job, disarm Hezbollah without causing a civil war or internal clashes? What can be done? I know this is not my job or your job, but this is definitely the government's job to come up with a defense strategy. Please, go ahead. Sorry?
First of all, you know the famous saying that we say in Arabic, Ikram al-mayyit dafnu, which is basically to honor a dead corpse is to lay it to rest. So, figuratively and also practically, we need to put Hezbollah in the ground, not just Hassan Nasrallah. The problem with the Lebanese political establishment and the people at large, they hide behind Hezbollah, just like they hid behind the Syrian occupation, just like they hid behind 15 years of civil war, because for them it was okay for them to live on an economy that was fictitious and a kind of a mirage when Rafi al-Hariri was alive. And at the same time, they believe that time again, when someone wakes up in DC, the first thing they ask about is Beirut, which is, as we all know, is not true. So what is actually needed is that when anyone talks to you as if Hezbollah is still around, we have to challenge them and tell them Hezbollah is dead. Is dead because the idea of Hezbollah died way before the IDF took care of business. And here Hezbollah has proven that it doesn't want to fight Israel anymore. Rather, it wants to play footsie. This is why ultimately it got into a big trouble with Israel, because Israel for the longest period of time, and Olmert here used to brag that yes, he might have lost the war in 2006, or he might have gotten a bloody nose, but it was a period of relative calm on the northern border with Israel. What is needed is to challenge them, to tell them you need to move on, and the only way to move on, and if you are looking for money and support from the international community, first of all, Bashar al-Assad is no longer here. He's gone. He will not come back anytime soon. Second, and more importantly, you are not talking to the Shiites when you're talking to Hezbollah and Amal. What is needed here, and I say it, is to go after Brig. Go after Brig, not to kill him physically, but to kill the idea of Brig. And this is where the policymakers should listen to us. Brig, for the longest period of time, has peddled himself as an ally of the US. Now, with him asking for the Ministry of Finance, for him asking to be represented, he should be held accountable and he should be sanctioned in case he stands in the way of Nawaf's government or any sort of implementation. And second, and more importantly, we should always challenge Brig to say, you are the person that agreed on the disarming of Hezbollah, not us. That's my first part of the answer. Second part, Hezbollah is too weak to do a civil war. Not only now, any time that Hezbollah has used its arms internally, they were defeated. When they tried to take the Druze, they were defeated. When they tried to fight the Arab of Khaldi, the Sunnis, they were defeated. When they tried to go into Ain al-Rumani, they were defeated. What I believe should be done now is to go after the port explosion. This is very important. Empowering the judiciary is very important, and also challenging people like Wafiq Safa, who still control a number of officers and a number of judges. This is why, and listen to me, people like Bilal Halawi, who's in charge of the investigation of Luqman Slim, should be sanctioned, because this person is clearly adopting the narrative of Hezbollah, and he is peddling their work. More importantly, any officer, just like the names that were leaked in the press, and I know for a fact that they don't need to read it in the press. Everybody knows everybody in Lebanon. We know who is in charge, and ultimately, Hanin, this lecture will be edited, and they will take our words out of context. I don't give a damn about Israeli security. I don't give a damn about U.S. foreign policy and priorities. I'm a Lebanese citizen who wants to live in an apartment which is not converted into an arms depot for Hezbollah or a drug depot for Hezbollah. We are dealing with drug dealers, and now what will happen? Random violence, because these people have stopped paying salaries, and these people who they have trained to kill in the name of God will turn and kill us. Yet at the same time, I am not that afraid, because simply if the Lebanese state gives direct orders to the army, especially the special forces, these people can hold Hezbollah and anyone else at bay. And this is something that Fadi Daoud knows, and any officer who served in the army knows.
Great. So we'll ask General Fadi Daoud this question, but it's interesting that basically one way to hold Hezbollah accountable and contain them from committing, like internal clashes, assassinations, and go back to their violence game is the judicial reforms. Basically, focusing on the port investigation is part of the judicial reforms. I would add, like the whole system, the judges, etc. If they are able to hold Hezbollah accountable, then that would limit Hezbollah's ability to use violence. So thank you, Makram. We have a few questions from the audience. I'll come back to you with this. But I want to ask General Daoud about this, what Makram said at the end, about the special forces and their ability to actually hold Hezbollah militarily, defeat Hezbollah militarily, if they are given the right political decisions. What do you think about that?
Ma'am, I think that Hezbollah now is not, or we have seen the first layer, second layer, and third layer of Hezbollah leadership. It has been destroyed. We have seen about 80 or 90% of its arsenal being destroyed. And we have seen its money cash being lost. And most importantly, the geostrategic change in Syria has made the difference in weakening Hezbollah. However, and if we are comparing the Lebanese Armed Forces with any armed group on the Lebanese soil, I believe the left is the strongest and will be the strongest. He will be the winner. However, due to the complex political landscape of the government, I don't think that the Prime Minister will adopt an aggressive stance toward the disarmament of Hezbollah. The Prime Minister Salam is unlikely to confront Hezbollah directly, as this could risk escalating internal conflict. So if it doesn't come from the political authority, as I have started my speech, the military will not work. But if we are balancing power, yes, I agree with you that Lebanese armed or special forces are very competent, and it's well known, and they have big experience, but they will not go against Hezbollah by the fear of creating an internal conflict. The life needed to be done politically before. They need political cover, and the sensitivity of the situation in our government and in our parliament. If it doesn't come from the political authority, it's not executable. The military will not execute, will not go for any kind of clash with any components of the Lebanese society.
Yes, so basically what we understand here is that the Lebanese army is capable of taking on Hezbollah militarily and is capable of implementing the ceasefire with decisiveness. But the problem is the political leadership probably not going for an aggressive approach or confrontational approach with Hezbollah, going back to the point that Makram said about resetting its mentality to, post October 7. Right, Makram?
If I may, just to elaborate, although we're focusing on Hezbollah, it's equally important to try to understand the environment that Hezbollah capitalizes on, not only Brig, but also the idea that everyone needs to be very mindful of the feelings of Hezbollah. I don't care what Hezbollah wants. I don't care what Nabih Berri wants. This is something which, unfortunately, even the pro-sovereign parties, headed by someone who I respect, Samir Jaja, still needs to understand we cannot deal with these people wearing gloves. Dealing with the Shiites of Lebanon is something else, but we should not justify what had happened. We justified time and again, and we committed political suicide when we elected Michel Aoun as president. So here, this is our chance to rebuild the structure from scratch, and more importantly, we should not hide behind the Lebanese Armed Forces. The Lebanese Armed Forces are the protectors of this temple, but the temple, which is the state, should be rebuilt on the idea of restructuring the banks, empowering the judiciary, and more importantly, not waiting for the US or Gulf to pay for our mistakes. We should not allow them to get money from the international community to get away with murder again.
Thank you. I have another question for you, General, which is mainly two questions. One is, we know how much the LAF has confiscated, how many positions, how many probably weapons they have destroyed, but do we know how much is remaining? Do we know how much Hezbollah has? According to the IDF, after the war, Hezbollah still has 20% of their arsenal, and the army has confiscated some. So at least not in terms of percentage, do we know what's left? Is it considerable? Also, what do you think Iran is still capable of rebuilding Hezbollah militarily with Syria closed off and the airport and the port monitored? Do they have access to Iran today? Just, logistically speaking.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Excuse me, could you repeat the first part of your question, please, ma'am?
The first part is that we know how much the LAF confiscated. What is remaining? Do we know what's left?
Actually, who knows how many rockets Hezbollah had before the battle? We don't have information. They are a secret organization, especially in Lebanon. They have strong intelligence, and they were able and capable of working secretly underground. So all what we know is what we heard on the news, that they had 150,000 rockets or even more. That's all what we know about their capabilities. Even we don't know about their maritime capability, about the drones they had. We know nothing about it. However, when I say 80%, I'm quoting media and a speech from presidents of states and the head of states and presidents of republic delivering speeches about Hezbollah. They said that Hezbollah had 80% of their arsenal had been destroyed. About the capability of rebuilding, we all know that Hezbollah not only import arms from Iran, Hezbollah also manufacture arms. And when you are talking about rockets are can be easily manufactured in any workshop, in any civilian workshop. So they have the know-how. Secondly, they still have money. They still receive money by many ways. Money can come to Lebanon. But the issue is the international community now, the international atmosphere doesn't foster the rebuilding of a new armed group or doesn't foster the revival of Hezbollah. You have seen President Trump, who is going very harsh on any, or at least let's say that President Trump has his plans for the Middle East, for Europe, and for every part of the world. And I think that Lebanon will not be outside this plan. And I see an opportunity to rebuild the government on a new and modern basis. So I don't know.
Okay, thank you. So maybe we can ask this questions to the next panel on what's left with Hezbollah. So I have a few questions from the audience, and I think General Daoud already answered most of them. But mainly it's more like the political part, which is if the next Lebanese elections, the May parliamentary elections, do you think it would reduce the political power of Hezbollah by reducing their representation? And then there's another very related question, which is, are there viable Shia alternatives to the duo, Hezbollah and Amal? And I think this question is for you, Makram.
Well, okay, let's start with one thing. First of all, the international community should not allow, under any circumstances, for constitutional events not to take place. And here it's extremely important to force Nawaf Salam to do the municipal elections followed by the parliamentary elections back to back. Because anyone who is familiar with Lebanon knows that political parties, including Hezbollah, they hate municipal elections because it brings out the family, and Hezbollah cannot control them. Second, and more importantly, by preventing them from acquiring funds, which they're trying to do now at the moment, and this is for anyone listening, it's not important to go after their Soviet-era weapons or their wedding drones, like I call them, because they have proven to be a joke. And Naim Asim is a living example of this tragic comedy that's called Hezbollah. So here, money is important. Elections should take place, and elections will definitely bring to parliament liberal Shiites. However, many of our not so brave, not to call them coward friends within the Shiite opposition, are trying to replicate the resistance model. I am a Lebanese citizen who wants peace, not peace with Israel, peace with anyone. Anyone who wants to carry a weapon to liberate their land should be willing to look for peace, and not with the state of Israel, but rather with everyone. And this is why I'm not willing to listen to any of our Shiite friends who will come to us for support in the upcoming elections, and they want to replicate the secular leftist resistance narrative, not because I am against it, but because it belongs to the 1970s. So yes, parliament can be taken. If you are someone who wants to support people like Nawaf Salam, you have to look towards the parliament. And this cabinet, Hanin, as you are well aware, has two basic functions: total disarming of Hezbollah, and then doing elections in a year and a half. Anything else will have to wait, including the economic recovery, because we're not willing to rebuild our homes and our villages so Naim Asim could hide in the basement. This is extremely important for everyone to listen to.
Thanks. But again, you know, like if do you think that the viable alternatives exist? But my main question here is something that you just mentioned, which is really interesting. Is there anyone in Lebanon today who actually want peace with Israel? Do you think Abraham Accords is a viable option for Lebanon? I hear it a lot, but you are on the ground.
The first people who will line up are the Shiites of the south. No one wants to die anymore, especially not for Khamenei. The entirety of the Lebanese want peace. We do feel for the Palestinians. We are very much hurt by what happened in the south of Lebanon. However, and again, we opened this Pandora's box. Hassan Nasrallah opened this when he decided the so-called war of support. Enough is enough. If we are to help in the ongoing, what Trump is doing is crazy, but not understanding what he's doing right now is also an act of craziness. We need to understand that what had happened, what Sinwar did was destroy the whole system. If we are to hide behind Sinwar, we are no different from his criminality.
So maybe to end the war, we need an actual formal peace agreement with Israel and an Abraham Accord that spreads probably to Syria and Lebanon. So, and this is something
You
that the
said this,
Lebanese
not me, because Lebanese law prohibits me from saying it.
No, this is me. This is me. Okay, I think we're good, unless General Daoud wants to add anything to this conversation. We're approaching the end of this panel. Anything else, General Daoud? You're good?
I'm good. Just waiting for the question.
All right. So thank you very much for joining the session. Thank you very much also, Dr. Rabah, for joining us. This has been very valuable, very informative and interesting. It's always good to share the panel with you. I would like to thank you now so that we can move right immediately to the next session with our second panel of speakers from Israel. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much for staying with us. And we'd like to move now to the next part of the of this event with the panel from Israel with my colleague here, Assaf Orion, who is again a retired brigadier general, and current Brigadier General Effie Durkin. Okay, sorry.
That's fine.
I wrote it down. And Effie Defrin. Both of you have worked on the coordination between Lebanon and Israel, and both of you understand the delicacy of the ceasefire agreement and what it means, the role of the UNIFIL, the role of the LAF, etc. We're looking now from an Israeli perspective on what's happening on the border. How do you see this is happening? You heard even from our first panel that the part of Israel staying inside Lebanon at this point is a controversial thing in Lebanon, but at the same time, there is an agreement that needs to be fulfilled for Israel to withdraw. The general talked about 5 different positions that Israel is intending to keep. How do you see this developing in terms of the ceasefire implementation post the extension? Will we see another extension? How this is playing in general? How do you see the achievements so far? I have a few questions for both of you, but first I would like to give you the floor to make a few introductory comments, and then we go to the discussion. Please go ahead, Assaf. Effie first? Okay, Effie, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Assaf. So first, Hanin, thank you. At the outset, let me thank you for participating in this important discussion, both because it's fascinating, and both because it's important, and secondly, it's fascinating to hear the point of view from Lebanon by both Professor Makram and General Fadi. Was really educating. So thank you for that. Those esteemed partners, I wish, inshallah, next time we can do it together with them and not in separate panels. There is no reason why it can't happen. Believe me, and in the last few years, we've been part of history on the making with our neighboring countries, and Lebanon should have been the first one, not the last one. But that's for future panels to discuss. So in short, I will continue my predecessors with a few points from the Israeli point of view. First thing is, let's talk about 1701 and its implementation and the ceasefire agreement. As far as Israel concerns, the IDF and the Israeli policymakers, this agreement is not depending on timings. We are talking about delaying and extending the ceasefire time and time again and again. But the main thing, the main condition was that the condition will be implemented, the conditions will be implemented, and not the time, because what happens if the time passes, the first 60 days and now next week, February 18th, and Israel withdraws from Lebanon and Hezbollah goes back and things continue to be as they used to be in the past, we didn't gain nothing out of it, not Israel, neither Israel nor Lebanon. So it's not good for any of the parties. Any of the parties. This core thing is acceptable on the US as far as I know, and also with Lebanon from day one. So this is first, and I will go through the first 3 conditions The first one is the withdrawal of Hezbollah from south of the Litani back north of the Litani. Hezbollah is still there. They're playing games, and this is the situation on the ground. They still live in this mindset of playing the covert game, which means they will wear civilian clothes. They will be part of associations, civilian association like Green Without Borders and things like they had in the past, and will continue to play this game. We cannot accept this thing. They should withdraw north of the Litani, and the rest is a problem of Lebanon and not of Israel. And this is not implemented so far. They are still there trying to rebuild their infrastructure down in the south. Second thing is the implementation of or the posture of LAF, Lebanese Armed Forces down in the south. They committed to 10,000 troops down in the south. Now the situation on the ground is on the march. They are going to reach the number of 5,000, half of what they committed to. We understand the problem. The problem is they have problems with the Syrian border, and they implement. They also send troops over there, which creates some problems. Again, Israel is not insisting on the numbers, but the condition to be implemented. If Hezbollah wasn't there, everything would be fine. The third main thing is the weapons embargo or the militarization of South Lebanon. And under 1701, there should be only one weapon in the hands of the government of Lebanon, the sovereign government of Lebanon, and its military, which means LAF, and not other groups. So those are the three main conditions which are not implemented as we speak now. The embargo, Hezbollah, we see time and time again, they were trying to renew their efforts to smuggle weapons from Syria still through the ports. As we speak now, there is a mini drama. I don't know if you're following. The Beirut airport is being blocked because the government of Lebanon is not allowing an Iranian airplane to land in Beirut port. They bring suitcases with American dollars in them to support Hezbollah, trying to revive it. So those three main conditions are not being implemented, and that's a problem. Now, the bottom line is Israel wants to bring back the citizens to their villages along the our northern border, and not only bring them back, but bring them back safely. Hanin, we want them to feel safe, and as long as those conditions are not implemented, we cannot bring them back. The Israeli government declared the 1st of March, bringing back opening schools again. This is a very important moment for us after almost 1 year and a half that those people are being displaced, hundreds of thousands of them, and we cannot bring them back home and return life to normality without those conditions being implemented. They won't come back. Now, regarding the 5 points, and this is final from my side. So what the IDF is trying now, it's up to a cabinet decision. It's a political decision, and of course, we'll have to agree with that with the Americans. We are trying to stay on high grounds, tactical points that controls, mainly you don't need map to understand, to control the Israeli-Lebanon border, where you have Israeli villages, and we can create a buffer zone, which we won't have Hezbollah putting those villages or civilians under risk. In any term, the IDF will not prevent Lebanese civilians returning back to their homes. So what I say here is that those 5 points, they won't have any friction with Lebanese villagers, only create buffer zones and where you have Israeli civilians. That's it from my side. So for now.
Thank you very much. I definitely have a lot of questions for you, but before I ask you my questions, I will go to Assaf, and I would remind the audience also, if you have any questions, you can post them on the Q&A in the Zoom link, or on the if you're watching on YouTube, you can email Policy Forum, one word, policyforum@washingtoninstitute.org. So go ahead.
It's great to be here and see Effie on the other side, and our Lebanese colleagues before us. Following Lebanon from 2006 onwards on the same business of trying to make this work, I think we hear new music of how can we make it succeed instead of why it would surely fail. And I think that's a new tone. We heard from Dr. Rabah that Hezbollah is seeking to go back to the old business. Actually, Lebanon is trying to go back. I named one of my last pieces on this, Back to the Future, because all of us have been the students of what happened in Lebanon since 2006, how Hezbollah deceived us all, how the Lebanese Armed Forces never saw anything, despite the fact that the IDF told them, here, this is what is happening. Effie and I spent among us about 10 years in Nakura discussing this. And we always told them that watching reality through eyes wide shut is not a good way to understand it. So I think we need to be open-eyed, to be strategic. The question is not on which day will Israel complete its withdrawal. We're not talking about the wedding, but at the marriage, the long-term relationship and the security regime that we can establish there. And as Effie said correctly, we're on a performance-based approach and not on a time-based approach. But the technical discussion in Lebanon is, yes, it's already Wednesday, by Sunday it needs to be over. We waited, I think, 50-something years if we start counting from 1970 Fatah land, and we can afford some more days. Now, I think that as opposed to back to the old business line, we need to internalize that the world has changed. Post-7 October is not the same world, not only because of Assad's fall, because Israel is totally transformed. It's no longer ready to accept all the things that it lived with back in the days. So let's look at the focus areas. We're not going to sit idly and watch violations. There's a good record, partial data, but from late January, the IDF said about 65% of the violation reports submitted to the mechanism were dealt with, 65%. All the rest were given like 72 hours or so, and then they were struck by the IDF. So we're seeing here a complementary approach of love first, UNIFIL if they can help. By the way, the 100 sites that were mentioned here by Fadi Daoud, these are the same 100 sites that the UN takes credit for. By the way, among us veterans, it always raises the question of where have you been since all those years? Haven't you seen this happening? Because you said you don't have a way to independently verify what Israel alleged so many years. So I think we need to keep our eyes on the balls. We need to see the Lebanese government directing the Lebanese Armed Forces in no duplicit language to go and disarm Hezbollah. South first, rest of the country second. We need to have the Lebanese government demand from UNIFIL to do exactly that, without whimpering and without apologies and without stopping before private properties, which is the main way for Hezbollah to hide. We need to go after the 4 Gs of Hezbollah's power. We need to go after their guns, after their gold, after their goons or manpower, and after their godfather, which is Iran. So if we look at it strategically or systemically, we need to make sure that the borders are tight. And we have a great opportunity now in Syria because Syria is also craving for support. And okay, both of you hold the border secure, the airport secure, the port secure, and then no flow of arms, no flow of money, may be the end of the drug problem, and that would be it. And two last points is one, we need to address UNIFIL, which may be an opportunity either to upgrade, be relevant, or to be cut down all the way to deleted. That's a moment of decision waiting for us come August. And last thing is the legitimacy issue and the security issue. Israel's sole interest in Lebanon is to prevent additional security threats. Hezbollah is portraying itself as protecting Lebanon from Israel. So the equation was either Hezbollah will do it or the Lebanese Armed Forces will do it. That's a false choice. Actually, what's been floated here before, seeking a peace treaty, or at least slapping a proposal for that on the table, will shake the fundament of Hezbollah's legitimacy, and actually will allow Israel to find good guarantees for its security, and Lebanon to find good guarantees, international guarantees for its security. So I think that needs to be our horizon, even if the way there is long.
Well, it might not be that long. We'll see. Thank you very much, Assaf, for always your valuable comments. Before I turn on to the questions from the audience, I have a few questions for you, General Effie. So you talk about the 3 goals, and you say that they haven't been implemented so far. Some of them have, some military infrastructure have been seized by the Lebanese Armed Forces. Some of their weapons have been destroyed. Maybe you don't have like a number, or you don't want, or you're not allowed to give a number, or maybe this is like more internal information. But can you give us at least like a sense of what's left, the performance of the LAF from your perspective, in terms of what exactly are they doing? What kind of infrastructure are they taking? How strong is Hezbollah today in terms of military infrastructure, weapons? Do they still have anything substantial, like precision missiles, long-range missiles, anything that would threaten the north of Israel, at least since you're talking about March 1, which is very, very soon? So what is left for them, despite their willingness to start a war or not? If they change their mind and decide to retaliate at one point, do they have the material to do that?
Well, thank you for that question, Hanin. And I would say I won't go into precise numbers. I really don't know exactly what Hezbollah has, but I can tell you that you mentioned some of the elements which Hezbollah is weakened with. But let's talk about facts. First, command and control. General or Dr. Makram Rabah mentioned Haj Safa. I think this is the only senior or the old guard left there.
Yeah.
Their command and control system is ruined. I'm talking about personnel. Second thing is their will, because of what they've been through in the last few months. Third thing is Iran backing and Iran orders. They are not in a position now to attack Israel. They are very weak, and that's, I think, the main thing. Iran, Syria, we mentioned the lines of communication going from Iran to Iraq and Syria, then to Lebanon, talking about weapons mainly, and more things. Trying to see now the Lebanese system trying to overcome the war, and Hezbollah as a whole, and I wish them luck, because it's our interest as well. Regarding the what we see on the ground, what Hezbollah is trying to do now. First, as I mentioned before, they are trying to play the covert game again, which means they are there. When Israel declared that there are approximately 20% of their weapons and personnel left, I think that's approximately a number to go through. 10 to 20%. They have long-range missiles. They have precise guided ammunition. Not everything is destroyed. We had good intelligence. Israel attacked The IDF attacked much of their storages in Lebanon, but they still have, and they have a capacity to hit not only the north of Israel but Israel as a whole. I think overall, and to follow Makram Rabah words, I think it's too early to eulogize Lebanese Hezbollah. They are still there. They are still politically and militarily. They are still there and strong. And that's exactly the dilemma. You see, withdrawing now from Lebanon by the IDF is abandoning Lebanon as well, not only the Israeli interest. It's abandoning Lebanon's interest, because we need to make sure Hezbollah is not there anymore, and it's weakened to the extent that the Lebanese system can overcome it and build something else. What they are doing now? What Hezbollah still have? First, suitcases of money, as we see now, trying to bring them from Iran to Lebanon, they are trying to rebuild their capability to smuggle weapons from Syria and through other means. They are trying to rebuild their tactical HQ headquarters down the south, and then covered as civilian facilities, and overall in Lebanon to renew these capabilities, their command and control capabilities. They're trying to make a difference between overt and covert. Again, use civilian from dress to facilities and so on. By the way, as far as Hezbollah concerned, they really believe that they will be able to go through it, to continue their efforts while Israel will withdraw from South Lebanon, to still exist in South Lebanon undercover. Another thing I would like to say here is also, and I'm trying to be politically correct, I'm a general in the military, I'm not a politician, but I have to say that there is an element, and Hezbollah is putting a lot of efforts in that. There are LAF that cooperated in the past. Assaf know that better than me, and it was published as well. Some elements, mainly in LAF intelligence, cooperated with Hezbollah in the past, and there are still elements within the LAF who are cooperating with Hezbollah, talking about sharing information, trying to sabotage the efforts of this committee, and so on and so forth. So those are the elements still exist, still strong. Again, it's too early to eulogize Hezbollah. I want to say, with your permission, a word to follow on Assaf's things on UNIFIL, if I may, because it's an important element here. UNIFIL, I'm very frustrated with UNIFIL, like Assaf is. Unfortunately, you see the new arrangement in South Lebanon, this international community led by the Americans and the French, mainly by the Americans, but also some French contingency. It's making the UNIFIL irrelevant anymore. Unfortunately, in the last few years, and I've seen it, and I also provided myself, it's first-hand testimony. I provided intelligence to the UN Security Council and to the Lebanese themselves, the Lebanese Armed Forces, the LAF, during those tripartite meetings on this on the activity of Hezbollah in South Lebanon. Nothing had been done. UNIFIL became part of the problem, and I'm sorry for being blunt, and not part of the solution. The question is, and we are hearing also some voices, Assaf, from the Americans and from the French themselves, surprising, about the relevancy of UNIFIL. Like you said, UNIFIL should be revitalized dramatically. If not, this mandate should not be renewed. And with the new administration in Washington, we know a waste of money they won't accept it. It's a waste of funds. We can do better in South Lebanon. They were part for years of, and I don't know what they did intentionally, but for years they played a game together with Hezbollah, and it grew to the level the threat, Hezbollah, grew to the level it came to. And they are part of the problem. We should acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Assaf, I would like to ask you the same question that I asked him, and two other questions on the political US-Israel relationship. So if you can answer this question that I asked General now, and also how do you think the new relationship between the US, that is the Trump administration, and Netanyahu, your prime minister, is going to impact this reality in Lebanon in terms of Hezbollah, the ceasefire, withdrawal, etc.? And also from the Israeli perspective, for both of you, how do you see the political changes in Lebanon? Do you think that this is something that is promising in terms of ending the war, disarming Hezbollah, really, Joseph Aoun and the prime minister? Do you see this as like a real difference from the past, from like an Israeli perspective? So please go ahead.
So first, on what's left of Hezbollah's power, I think they're down but not out, as Effie said, and unlike what I think Dr. Rabah wishfully said. So in this profession, you better keep your eyes on your target.
No, just because he's not here, just to clarify, Dr. Rabah said that they are politically, as an idea, they're done. What is left is just some weapons. I think he agrees with you.
I think it's an enemy with a inherent regeneration capability, and surely motivation. And for that we need to be crystal clear and very vigilant.
Assaf, with your permission, I would like to interrupt you just to mention, an anecdote here, that still as we speak now, I don't know how to call them, an activist within Hezbollah earns more money than last soldier, not to mention officers, high-ranking officers, and officers as a whole. And this is just to enforce the thing you are saying, because unless it will be changed dramatically, Hezbollah will come again. Money talks.
Absolutely. If they get money, yeah,
absolutely.
If they get the money,
I think the important thing to understand of what's left, and I start with the bottom line. We just heard a senior Israeli decision maker who said, when we went after Iran late October, Hezbollah was not a consideration. That's a big strategic change if you compare it to the past, when a war with Hezbollah was the bonus for anything you tried or supposed to be tried planning against Iran. A very important thing is to look at the casualties. They, I think, in September stopped actually reporting their names and numbers, but the assessments are somewhere around the 4,000 Hezbollah members dead, and about 1.5 that time seriously injured, and all the rest injured and so on. You probably got something between 10 and 20,000 members between dead and wounded.
Yeah,
that's a significant blow to let's say 30 to 50,000. 50
maximum 30. Yeah.
Yes,
maximum
but
30.
and Nasrallah said he has 100,000.
Believe him?
We should send some more Hezbollah people to ask him. I think Hezbollah lost reputation, and that's a severe blow. Nasrallah used to be the brand name of ridiculing Israel and so on. Hezbollah lost to Israel the embedding and blaring of the civilian military. Why? Because Israel says, okay, you, as we said to Hamas, you choose to go to schools, hospitals, and other sanctuaries. These are no longer sanctuaries. You can run, but you cannot hide. So the concept of I will build my army inside my villages, inside my supporters' homes, is answered in two phases. One is their direct destruction, and the destruction is huge. And the second is that Israel says these are terror infrastructure and they cannot be rebuilt. So I think we have the school of war generated by Hezbollah, Iran, Quds Force, and Soleimani, I think stands now to the test, if they will be rebuilt at all. So I think that it's a good prediction to understand that whatever Hezbollah has, it's no longer a war-waging capability, although they can hurt us. But will they dare and will they, suffer the cost? That's a big question. I think Israel will continue to strike until, for future to come. After the withdrawal, complete or incomplete, I don't exclude Israeli ground raids if things are developing beyond our thresholds. Saying, okay, you can strike off, stand off, from outside, or you can go in and clean it up if it's not being treated by the Lebanese Armed Forces. Basically, we're in a decisive moment fighting a mafia organization. One of my UNIFIL colleagues, I told him, these are not angry civilians that your reports talk about. This is Hezbollah. He told me, look, I'm an Italian. Don't you think I know a mafia when I see it? So I think everybody knew what it was about, but didn't have the appetite to do it, including Israel. Now that Israel has the appetite, we need to check the other parties' appetite. Now, the Trump-Netanyahu situation, they have a full plate in front of them. They have Gaza, they have Iran, they have many issues. I think it's very clear that there are hardly any daylight between them. There is a big and a significant U.S. involvement now in Lebanon that was vacant from 2006 onwards. So the Jeffers mechanism is very important and very hands-on and connects immediately to the political level and not only to the Lebanese Armed Forces. So I think we can continue advancing in lockstep on this. On the political change in Lebanon, I think it's dramatic. However, we need to wait and see where it goes, because it can be a good start and a good continuity, or it can be a good start and then a change and going back to the old habits. And so wait and see, watch their hands, see their appointments, follow the money, and watch what the LAF is expected to do by their own directives.
Okay.
As Effie started before, follow the performance, not the words, but the deeds. If they walk the walk and not just if they talk the talk.
So on this, actually, I think this is a question for both of you, and let's start with Effie here. There is actually a question today about the U.S. assistance program to the Lebanese Armed Forces, with everything, being frozen, put on hold, foreign assistance going on. This is a juncture for the Lebanese Armed Forces. They are trying to do their job. They need the political decision. Maybe this is not the time actually to freeze this funding or stop this funding. This is critical for the LAF, but also there are problems within the LAF that needs to be addressed while, continuing this funding. So some people suggest a conditional kind of assistance. Some people suggest assistance based on deliveries. What do you recommend as, Israeli general? How do you see this being discussed within the IDF and political circles? Is this something that you think the U.S. should continue with the U.S. With the assistance program to the LAF, and how? What is exactly your recommendations here?
So first, I would say that the Israeli interest and the IDF, and not only now, not after October 7, or even before that, the Israeli interest is a strong love. Lebanese Armed Forces, we know, is the backbone of Lebanon, is the only popular, the only stable thing in Lebanon. We would like to see it strong and stronger, as long as you said, in conditions, as long as they not cooperate with Hezbollah, as long as they loyal to the Lebanese government and the Lebanese Ministry of Defense, and again, there is also the political side in Lebanon that should play its role. This is at the outset. Now, having said that, there are, and sorry for being blunt, there are elements of corruption in the Lebanese system. Lebanon is still Lebanon, and then not only on the political side, but also in the military. There are some elements cooperating still with Hezbollah or with negative elements in Lebanon, and those those officers should be sanctioned. It worked in the past when the Americans put some effort in that. We supplied the information, and when they sanctioned those elements within LAF, it worked, and they stopped. And of course, every support should be conditioned and inspected. Now, I mentioned before the salary of Hezbollah and LAF. You know, we should support LAF, but again, condition. And I agree. And General Daoud mentioned it himself. We should support LAF, but the international community should not supply money to Lebanon. They should supply equipment. The only money that should go, currency money that should go there is money for salaries, and it should be inspected. The money should go to salaries to officers and soldiers of LAF, and other than that, equipment, capabilities, and not money for budget. Because again, both systems, military and political, they are not perfect. Now there is a dilemma. It won't take a day. It won't take 1 day or 1 month or 1 year to clean the ranks. Again, General Daoud himself mentioned it before. In order to reconstruct the Lebanese Armed Forces and to bring some fresh air, new officers to the ranks, trained by the West, by the Americans mainly, it will take time. We should have patience, but until that time, I think this is what Assaf mentioned. Israel should implement itself. We should take care of our security until we have them as full partners. And I have to say, ma'am, I have to say one more thing. We appreciate the efforts. We see that. We appreciated it in the past, and it's growing now. The efforts being done by LAF. Every information that being received by LAF is being treated properly, not like in the past. We used to pass through UNIFIL information to LAF. Not always it went to the right time. They never had the right motivation. Now they do, and they work hard. It's not enough. Of course, it's not enough. And many of the things you see in South Lebanon now are very positive, but it's not enough. It's a process. We understand it takes time. On the political system, just to refer to your previous question, again, I agree it's a dramatic change. I remember one thing. Now, and again, Professor Rabah mentioned that as well. We should make sure that Mr. Berry is not part of the problem now. He is, he was part of, he's the head of Amal. They were part, by the way, of shooting at Israel. When the war started on October 8th, nobody mentioned it, but you should follow him very carefully. He's very sensitive to sanctions, by the way, economic sanctions. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
Well, I totally agree with Effie. The aid should come, but conditioned by performance. What is the performance? First, we need to see the Lebanese Armed Forces prevent issues like popular provocations that Hezbollah arranges, the return of the villagers to the south. That ended up with 24 killed, Lebanese killed. Most of them, I think, Hezbollah. But the main thought of sending people, supposedly civilians, to clash with the IDF, it's something that we know from 2011 already. Occasionally they do it, and LAF has shown various levels of responses to that. Second is the actual participation in disarming Hezbollah infrastructure. During those years, we've experienced LAF lying for the Lebanese, for Hezbollah, covering up, saying, look, yes, these are civilians, they are armed. Actually, it's our military intelligence. They also go in plain clothes. We cannot have that. And even in UN reports, you see that the Lebanese Armed Forces told UNIFIL not to go to some places because these are areas with strategic importance to the Lebanese Armed Forces themselves. And that's in addition to no access to the private property cover. So these, I think, would be good elements on performance, border security, disarmament, general security, and so on. Second condition needs to be designated between vetted and incriminated people collaborating with Hezbollah. It's actually part of the side letter between the US and Israel. The US says we will provide intelligence on that, or we'll exchange intelligence for that. I think a central arm involved in such cooperation is the military intelligence, and it needs to be, scanned vigorously. And then I think you'd find that Israel is one of the great supporters of Lebanese armed forces, both by supporting aid, conditional of course, and dealing with their main problems, as we heard from our colleagues.
Correct. So I think we're getting towards the end of our session. Unless you have anything else to add, Effie, here, it's last opportunity to say something.
No, I would say something that I started with. In the last meeting I attended with the Lebanese, and I was always frustrated with them. And I told them, look, I just came. In the last meeting, I told them I just came from a meeting in which I met officers from the UAE, Saudi, Qatar, Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan. Why Lebanon is not there? It can be our best friend. We share lots of interest. We are bordering. We have common border. We have good history of relations with the Shia community of South Lebanon in the past. Inshallah, it will happen soon.
Inshallah. Thank you both very much for this very, very interesting discussion. I really would like to thank the people who joined us, thank the previous panel. There are a lot of topics here. We discussed a lot of details, but just to summarize, some of the main issues, recommendations here is that it's obvious that for Lebanon to contain Hezbollah from using their usual violence against the Lebanese, especially that their challenge is to maintain their political positions in the next parliament, is really judicial reform. Judicial reforms will hold them accountable. But also the LAF needs its own reforms. The assistance program to the Lebanese army, the US assistance program, must continue because this is a very vital moment for the LAF to be strong. We can't create this void, but again, the speakers all agree that it has to be conditional. There has to be some restructuring to make sure that the LAF is strong and capable of doing its job, and get rid of the bad elements that are coordinating with Hezbollah. And then this will be not only for the benefit of Israel, but also for Lebanon. We definitely talked about the LAF strong enough today after the defeat of Hezbollah to face Hezbollah militarily, to contain Hezbollah militarily. We talked about special forces. There are other forces that are capable of doing that. However, it awaits a political decision because at the end of the day, the new president, the new government per se, is the one capable of actually getting the LAF the cover, the decision, the guidelines in order to push it to do its job properly. Without the political decision, the LAF will not have the guidance on what to do. So that's definitely needed. And last but not least, it's amazing that everybody agrees that Birri needs to be also under the spotlight today, knowing that he can play both sides, but today he is obviously playing Hezbollah's side in terms of maintaining whatever power is left for them in Lebanon. He is under pressure internally as well, but we know we need to make sure that he's also under pressure from the international community. So Assaf, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think we need to end on an optimistic note, in a sense. We are now in a state of war.
Yeah.
Currently in a cessation of hostilities in its implementation phase. I think we need to be able to build this staircase for a better future, with the next step being a permanent ceasefire, which addresses the main problems of the security threats there, and to build a horizon for a permanent peace down the road.
Agreed. 100%. Ceasefire, truce, and then peace. That sounds like a good plan. Good plan. Thank you both very much. This was a great discussion. I'm sure everybody learned from you. And good luck with everything, General. So we'll be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.